Donald Trump is calling on Iran's leaders to come to the negotiating table as a second armada makes its way to the region. The U.S. president, intent on striking a nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic in the wake of its recent bloody crackdown on anti-government protests. Demonstrations had broken out over the state of Iran's economy, weighed down by crippling Western sanctions. For more on all of this, we can bring in our foreign affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, good to see you. Just a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump had threatened a military action because of that bloody crackdown, but now it seems he wants a nuclear deal.
Yeah. If you're asking me, what's going on here, why, what does he want? It's hard to really speculate. And, you can't overanalyze Donald Trump because he doesn't really analyze, I don't think, himself. He doesn't put too much of a deep dive strategic think into this. What we do see is that he is, as you suggest, he's shape-shifting in his approach to Iran. A few weeks ago, his tweets, his Truth Social posts were about coming to the aid of the Iranian citizens, pro-people, mass, large anti-government rallies. There is a violent crackdown, an extremely brutal and violent crackdown by the Iranian regime against these protesters. And in the midst of this, Trump said, the United States stands ready to come to your defense, to the defense of the protesters. We have not, and I will mention that the estimates of the death toll from those protests is becoming horrific beyond even what people originally thought, well beyond just a few hundred or several thousand. It's now at least, perhaps by some estimates, 10,000 or much more. Donald Trump now reframing, refocusing the escalation against Iran. Now it's more in the nuclear prism. And what I mean by that is his main demands in these latest threats are, he's saying, get back to that negotiating table, ... or else, right? And so he wants, stop your uranium enrichment, limit the number and the range of your ballistic missiles, right? Those are the missiles that Iran used in the 12-day war back in June, firing them onto Israel. Stop all of that and stop your support for your proxy militias, the Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, throughout the Middle East. That, at least on paper, are formally the demands. But you would be justified in saying, but what's going on here? Why was it first about the protesters? Now it's about the nuclear deal and the talks. And those talks have broken down. They have absolutely stalled. At the end of the day, it's unclear. Does Donald Trump want regime change? Does he want to topple the leadership right up to the Ayatollah, the supreme leader? We know in the protests, a lot of those protesters were actually chanting against the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, almost unheard of. It started as economic grievances, but then mushroomed into something much broader, a real anti-regime sort of shape to these protests, hence the brutal crackdown, because the regime has seen it in many respects as almost an existential threat. So Donald Trump, toppling the regime, stopping their supposed nuclear program towards a weapon, which Iran denies, a mixture of both, trying to distract attention from the Minneapolis and the ICE brutality. It's probably a little of all of that. It's impulse. It is impulsive. It's spur of the moment, and I wouldn't go too much into overanalyzing Donald Trump's own strategic thinking on this.
The fact that a second armada is on its way to the region, essentially Donald Trump wants the Iranians to negotiate with a gun to their head.
Intimidation.
So how have they been responding?
Exactly like that. The Iranians are basically saying officially, they're open to dialogue and diplomacy, but they don't want to do it under pressure with a gun to their head, as you say. They don't want to do it under coercion. They say that negotiations, which they are willing to have, must be genuine, and they must be based on mutual respect. I am actually quoting the exact words as written up by the Iran state-run IRNA news agency, the Islamic Republic's official news agency, saying they must be based on mutual respect and credible guarantees. That's the official propaganda line out of Iran. But you can also say that in the face of Donald Trump, it almost comes out sounding reasonable in the sense that, as they see it, Donald Trump's approach is one of all coercion and no real dialogue, at least not to this point. And the parliamentary speaker gave an interview in recent days to Western news outlets in which he basically said, as he sees it, Donald Trump's entire approach is to try to, by force or the threat of force, to impose his will without any sense of valuing the negotiating partner with the respect that Iran demands. So what's interesting here is they're not ruling out dialogue. They say, hey, we're willing to talk, but they also remind people that Donald Trump's the one who tore up the original nuclear
Exactly,
deal.
I was just going to point that
right,
out.
from 2015. In his first term in 2018, he unilaterally withdrew from that deal, from the United States from that deal.
Doug, very briefly, Europe too is tightening the screws on the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, they are. Well, we saw France yesterday actually officially, after a long holding out, finally joins other European states in putting the Revolutionary Guards, the so-called IRGC Corps in Iran, labeling them as official terrorist group. Now the European Union is also, it seems, poised to vote. They need a unanimous vote. There cannot be dissent within the 27-member ranks. But at this point, it doesn't seem to be anyone who is likely to block. That is, it appears to be that they have a relative consensus here, which could lead to the IRGC being put on that designated terrorist list. And I will just note that Europe says if that happens, they still want to keep, and they hope it will still keep, channels of communication open to Iran and its leaders.